hair straight out of the package. This is the frontal right here. I think it's a 13 by 6 inch frontal. It's a loose body wave texture, and there are also 3 bundles of 28-inch hair. I went ahead and straightened those the frontal and the bundles off camera, and as you can see, it's got a super nice texture. This isn't even stick straight. This is just a quick pass with the flat iron, just to make it a little bit easier for me to bleach and process and handle. So first thing you're going to need is some bleach. I'm using the Schwarzkopf Blonde Me Powder Lightener and Cream Developer. You're also going to need a mixing bowl and a brush, and of course some gloves to protect yourself from that bleach. I'm going to go ahead and start mixing up that bleach. There's no method here really, I'm just looking more for consistency. I ended up using a lot more Cream Developer than Powder Lightener, just so that I could really stretch that product and get the most for my money. I was really just going for more of a Greek yogurt consistency, a little bit thicker so that it doesn't drip and seep everywhere. I really wanted it to stay where I put it and process there. I think my biggest consistent tip is to protect your hands. Make sure that the hair isn't in any way tangled or snagged on anything, and you really want to completely saturate every single strand of hair. You can see I'm doing a pretty quick pass over just the top layer of the hair right here, and right after I finish that top layer, I'm going to brush through it completely and then flip it over and continue to completely saturate every single section. You'll see that some areas are lightening pretty quickly. You can see that color change even through the bleach and the product there. So just be aware of your timing. You gotta work quickly with stuff like this because it does process super quickly. Like I said, I'm just gonna brush through it really quick, detangle it, and start working on the sections that didn't get any bleach on it. And here I am working on the underside of that hair, the part that didn't get any bleach because it is that thicker consistency. Also, do not forget to hit your knots with that bleach while you're on that backside. You don't want any dark knots. That's gonna help sell the illusion of it being super transparent lace and completely melting into your scalp. So there are still some darker sections in the root and deeper in the frontal, more towards the, if it were on your head, it would be more towards the crown of your head. So I'm going through separating and hitting those darker sections with some bleach, just to, again, completely saturate every single section. So once every single section of this frontal is completely saturated, I'm going to let it process for about 25 to 30 minutes, and then we are going to rinse it out. So here you can see I'm starting to rinse the hair out. I'm hitting it with some cold water. You don't want to use warm water after you've heat processed or bleached hair because you will damage it further. So now I'm moving on to my second process. As you can see, it's this kind of light honey blonde. It's still got a lot of red and orange undertones. So we're gonna hit it again with a second round of bleaching. Again, going section by section. I'm being a lot more meticulous and grabbing smaller sections this time, just so that we get a really even process and it's all the same color. Obviously, we're going to be toning the hair and adding color in later, but you do want a blank canvas to work with. So you need to work in really small sections and make sure that it's all completely saturated. I wanted this video to be super detailed, but also didn't want to have you sitting here for half an hour, so I cut out the processes that I did on the bundles. I followed the exact same steps that I'm doing to the frontal. It was just on the 3 bundles. Same process, same steps. You want to completely saturate every single strand of hair. Make sure you're working in small sections and let it process for about 25 to 30 minutes and then shampoo it out. So right here you can see that I'm moving the frontal to a piece of foil and hitting those knots another time with the bleach to make sure that they're the lightest they can possibly be. So again, we're gonna let that process for about another 25 minutes in the foil, and then we're gonna take it out and shampoo it a second time. So now we're going to be moving on to our second shampoo. I'm first going to get all of that bleach out of the hair, and then we're going to shampoo it with some shimmer lights and move on. Right here I'm going to be using the Wella Color Charm 7W, and I'm going to be using that as a root color for this frontal. You got to mix it 1:1, so I'm using 2 bottles of that Wella Color Charm as well as 2 bottles of Cream Developer. Mix it up real good, and then I'm going to start working in sections and applying that root color to the hair. In retrospect, because of the color that I ended up toning the hair, this root color wasn't super necessary. You can't tell. It ended up looking like a very slight shadow root instead of an actual dark root. But if you want to keep that darker root and keep the tips of the hair lighter and the majority of the hair lighter, that is also an option. Similar process as when we were bleaching, except this time I'm going to be using foils just to really keep that root color on the root and not spill over onto any of the other sections of the hair. Once I have all of those roots covered in that color, I'm going to let it process for a little bit and then we will rinse it out. Just something to note really quick, when you are toning the hair with the Wella Color Charm, the hair is supposed to be a little bit damp. You don't want it obviously dripping wet, but it tones best on damp hair. Another step that I didn't manage to catch on the camera was a full shampoo with the shimmer lights, as well as a treatment on the hair with a silicone mix deep conditioner, and that really just helps protect the hair from damage and breakage while we're sewing it together. This is a different style mesh dome cap than you typically see. I went ahead and put the mesh cap on and marked from ear to ear where that frontal would sit on my head, and then drew a little chalk line. I pinned that dome cap and the frontal along that line to my canvas wig block that is the exact same size as my head. This is really important because you don't want the wig to end up smaller than your own head or bigger than your own head. Here I have some intrinsic thread or weave thread and a curved needle. You're gonna need this stuff because it's stronger than regular thread, and the curved needle is gonna help you get through that wefting and through that frontal and under the cap. When I'm sewing the frontal, I'm gonna go ahead and start in the center and tie off, and then I'm gonna work my way to the ears, and I'm going to be using a chain stitch. There are plenty of tutorials out there on how to chain stitch, but I also will be showing a close-up of the method that I'm using. Alright, so here's that close-up. Basically, you're going to be passing your needle through the cap into the edge of that frontal in the back, and it's going to create a loop. You're going to put the needle through that loop and pull tight. Once you reach where the edge of the cap is, right where your ear would hit, you're going to tie off super tight. Make sure that once you cut the thread, you don't cut it too short because you're going to need to tie it another time after the needle is taken out of the thread. And then you're ready to move on to the other side. So for the first few rows of wefting, I'm going to be using the fold over method, which basically means that I'm not going to be cutting once I get to the end of a row. I'm just going to be folding it over and starting that second row on a fold. As you can see, I'm pinning everything into place and making sure that it fits that cap size exactly, and then I'm going to start my stitch. I'm trying not to be super repetitive, but you are going to tie off in the exact same way, and then start pushing that needle through the wefting, through the cap, and then putting that needle through the loop in the thread and doing the chain stitch method that I showed you earlier. Hand sewing can tend to get a little daunting, so I just put on some Netflix or some music and get to work. So obviously jumping quite a bit, we are now getting closer to the crown of the head, and as you can see, my rows are starting to flatten out a little bit. They have less of a U shape to them, and that is because as you get closer to the crown of the head, you need them to lay a little bit flatter so that once you reach the frontal, they will match the curvature there. Again, same chain stitch method. I am going about every 1/4 to 1/2 inch in between stitches, and that is to make sure that that wefting is super tight to the cap and not going to go anywhere. Now you can see how flat that wefting is actually starting to get as we get super close to the top of the frontal. And then you're going to see that they start to arch the opposite direction, like I said before, to meet the frontal's curve. Want to make sure to pre-measure all of your wefting just so that you don't have any bald spots or have any leftover wefting when you're finished. As you can see, I have a tiny little gap in between my frontal and that top piece of wefting. I did end up filling that in because I had a tiny bit left over, and that is because I accurately measured before I started sewing everything down. Once everything was stitched down, I shampooed the hair one more time and treated it with the silicone mix again, and then I went ahead and did a full tone all over the hair, including that root color, just to darken it up a little bit because I wasn't liking the blonde that it was at. Here it is right after I had shampooed that toner out of it. It does look very, very ashy, and that's just because of the flash on it and because of the lighting in the bathroom. As you can see, it turned out this really pretty strawberry blonde, and here is a couple of clips of the hair in action.
Little Sally Walker walking down the street. She didn't know what to do, so she jumped in front of me. Little Sally Walker walking down the street. She didn't know what to do, so she jumped in front of me. I said, go on, girl.